School of Social Justice Tour of London. We're about to begin. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. You ready?
I'm always ready, man. You know who that is behind us?
Who is it?
Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah.
Do you know who Abe is?
A little bit, but I'm sure you can tell me more about him.
So Abe was a former president of the United States, and he was the person who really pushed for the emancipation of slaves in America, and is definitely one of the heroes for the School of Social Justice in terms of learning from greats. And yeah, with the new series coming up, he's definitely someone we should consider as an example of how leaders can make a difference. But
When's it out?
when's it out? That's a good question. So probably September this year.
Okay,
We're still finalising things. Currently it's just the beginning of August.
Yeah.
But hopefully September 2023 if all goes to plan, and if not, we'll probably delay it to October. But yeah, basically end of this year.
Awesome.
Do you know what this building is?
No, what is it?
This is... Can you see that? Perfect timing, 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
It's the Supreme Court. This is where judgments are made at the highest level. When there are two or more parties trying to figure out what is right and wrong, this is where it comes up.
Yeah.
Actually, one of the cases that I was working on when we sued Facebook in response to Cambridge Analytica ended up going to the Supreme Court. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court decided to side with Facebook, which meant that class actions in response to data misuse in Britain couldn't go ahead. So sometimes cases end up being here, don't go the way as you plan, but it doesn't mean stop. And I think it raises a lot of questions about what justice is and the need for an appreciation of all the evidence, conversation between the sides about what is right and wrong, different cases made, and then in the end a judgment being made. But also understanding that judgments can be overturned.
Yeah.
And throughout history, something might be conceived to be undeniably right and correct, and then later on can be reformed, given a new nature and time. One of our guests is Lord Neuberger. Lord Neuberger is actually the former president of the Supreme Court, the guy who used to run the show there. I mean, he wouldn't say it that way, but he talks about the power of law and the importance of the craft of the legal profession to make sure you miss and take care on the roads, but also use it as a means to achieve justice. Another guest is one of the deputy mayors of this great city, Debbie Weeks-Bernard, who's the deputy mayor of social justice. And we also have, for example, the CEO of Amnesty International Great Britain and the CEO of Oxfam Great Britain. But before we go into that, do you know who this is?
Yes.
Yeah, Nelson.
Who's that?
Nelson.
What do you know about Nelson?
He's the king of South Africa.
Let me turn it around. Let me turn it around. What do you know about Nelson?
Yeah, he was an activist in South Africa till he got jailed when it was under apartheid, and then when he came out, became president.
That's it. Symbol of change, symbol of determination and belief. Imprisoned for what he believed in.
For 27 years or something like that. Crazy. One of South Africa's greatest leaders.
What's that?
One of South Africa's greatest leaders.
What does he mean to you, personally?
Quite a lot. I'm South African, so I don't know, so it's like quite a massive thing.
How so?
My family left South Africa because of apartheid. Oh, yeah, so it's a big thing. He's kind of the role model for everyone.
Yeah, definitely a role model for me as well. His book, Long Walk to Freedom, is one of those books which inspired me, and within that book he talks about actually quite a funny thing which I took with me throughout my life, where he said that, in a meeting you'd guess that the so-called leader is the person who just speaks a lot. But actually what Mandela would do is listen first. He would listen, and he would let everyone talk, and at the end look at and think about what everyone said and then make a conclusion about what he felt was the best way forward. I think it's an example of like how he as a leader kind of worked, held himself, and also the values he had where he put people first. So a great example of somebody we can learn from as a social justice warrior.
Absolutely.
And yeah, what do you think about, what else do you want to know about the upcoming series?
Are there any more guests you can tell us about which
Yeah, we actually got Paul Powsland, who was a barrister, he is a barrister, who just around there, when the king was made monarch, or was about announced to be the new king, King Charles, he went out to the protests where people were protesting, saying "Not my king," and he asked the police officer, "If I hold up this piece of blank paper, I don't write anything, but I'm just potentially going to say "Not my king," would I be arrested?" And it became a case of free speech because the police officer said, "Well, yeah." And so he's taken on literally a barrister called King in a way to try and protect our freedom of speech. So another great guest who's shown the power of law and also the power of campaigning and creative thinking and going on the front lines. And he literally did that over there, which is amazing. I'll give you another example of one other guest. We have another guest, Cristina Palabay. So Cristina Palabay is a Filipina human rights campaigner, and she works right now in the Philippines on protecting her fellow activists from cases where their lives are at threat. And within that episode, it's a really quite deep one because she details how sadly one of her colleagues was killed on the front line, a trade unionist, and reminds us of the real kind of difficulties, challenges and risks of being an activist. And the sad thing is that's a truth for most people who are trying to fight against injustice and the powers that be. And right now we're stood in front of one of those people who did so. A hero to many, Mahatma Gandhi, the man who became an icon for India and home rule and the separation of Great Britain from that. But also a man who espoused the values of peace, peaceful methods of protests, knowing that you can never defeat the Goliaths and enemies through violence, because it would just be a constant battle to see who had the bigger weapon. For him, it was about the values of, as I say, peace and again another hero, social justice warrior. How about Miss Fawcett? Do you know about the suffragettes?
A little bit, but I could learn more. I could definitely learn more.
Well, what does the poster say? Courage?
Courage, calls to courage everywhere.
So there was a point where in this country, this great country, Great Britain, women were not allowed to vote. It was perceived that women were not good enough or naturally ready and had other responsibilities, that being to be housewives. And it was through the campaigning efforts of women like Ms. Fawcett and others who actually risked their lives, and some of them whose lives were taken, using tactics like not eating, doing protests in big national events, organising in the streets and in the buildings and the houses and the homes of people. One by one, group by group, woman by woman, and also other people within that group of suffragettes fighting for change. And I think it's an amazing example of how, a group of people once determined to be powerless, rising up and organising to be powerful. And what's amazing in this second series of School of Social Justice video podcast, we have a plethora of really strong change makers who are women across the world fighting to make a difference in their communities, their nations, their regions and the world.
Amazing.
Actually, that was an apt end to this because MLK, of course, is a big part of what we're trying to do.
He's part of the motto.
What's the motto?
Train the next generation of Martin Luther Kings.
That's right, that's our mission. So it's an easy one, right? Easy mission.
So easy.
Ambitious at least, but we've got to try because one of the lessons I learned having studied and worked with so many change makers is that change doesn't just happen. Well, it does happen. You can let it happen to you, or you can rise up and fight for change that you believe is right. And so many guests really prove that. And hopefully we can share the wisdom of those guests with people watching so that they can actually follow in their footsteps and learn and develop themselves and take those leadership roles. Because every generation, every moment is going to need a new group of change makers to really stand up. So basically every episode is going to be released once a week.
Yeah.
So we've got 20 episodes. Every Monday we're going to share them full length, and then throughout the week we're going to post daily different clips, highlights. And in between November and January, we're actually going to do a patron raiser where we're going to take a break from sharing our content and ask people to donate and become patrons, regular givers to the School of Social Justice, chipping in a £5 a month, up to however much people can afford. And if we get 2,500 patrons, we as an organisation are going to be able to run independently, which would be amazing, because this hard work and this organisation depends on the contributions of everyday folk. So it's amazing. We started off with Abraham Lincoln, we saw Nelson Mandela, Supreme Court, we saw Gandhi, we saw Fawcett, and now Martin Luther King Jr. himself. Yeah, so I'm surprised.
Is he a saint then?
No, I don't think he's a saint. I don't think technically he's a saint. But maybe he is. I don't know. Maybe that's a question for the viewers to answer. If you know the answer, just put it in the comments.
Is he Reverend? Reverend Martin Luther King? No.
He's a pastor. He was a pastor. So I assume he was known as Reverend as well. Maybe. I have no clue. We definitely need to find out the answer. But obviously, put there, given his fight for justice and his example as a person of faith, dedicated to his community, stood by his values and his beliefs.
Would you say he's your biggest inspiration?
I think in life, me personally, I've got so many inspirations, right? Like my mum's story is unreal, coming to this country 19, cleaning hotels in the Lake District, losing her partner, my father, at a young age being a single mum. She's inspiration, MLK's inspiration, Corazon Aquino's inspiration, your inspiration. Like, there's so many inspirations. But I think MLK for sure is. I mean, his name is in our organisation as our mission, so clearly very important. But also recognising that one leader is not enough. And I think MLK's story is one of the civil rights movement, where he was one of many people, millions of people. This is our second ever series. Our first one was amazing group of guests. We're very early in our journey. The civil rights movement took years, decades, and you can even look at its origins even further back, when you had distractions and things which tried to move us away from what we were trying to do, which was trying to fight for what was right. They stood their ground and kept on fighting, and I think for us at the School of Social Justice since the very beginning, I'm so excited about the second series. I'm also looking forward to the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh series. So the way we get there is if you support us, if you like our stuff, if you engage, if you get involved, and if you learn, please share your stories. I think that's one of the key things. In the end, this is all about sharing knowledge, wisdom, and tips and advice with you people, you right now watching, who aspire to become a change maker. If you want to learn how to make a difference, watch our content, learn from our teachers and our guests, but also challenge us and really think about how you can get involved and help us make a difference